Buenas and half a day. Y mina 35 na legislature. Wahan is back from recess. When we last left, we were still on Bill 375-35 COR. I'm now going to call anybody else on the main motion. Anybody else on the main motion? If not, Minority Leader, I will recognize you at this time.
Sujus Masi, thank you, Madam Speaker. I was just trying to get organized here.
No worries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on Bill 375. You know, Madam Speaker, it was put in the media that I supported that there would not be a primary in this election. I believe that health comes first, more than anything, more than the savings that we can save for this government, especially in these dire times. But it was health. The main reason why I supported not having a primary is because of the public health issue. And every day we're seeing more people being tested, and the numbers are climbing, and then we see hardly anybody being tested, and the numbers are lower, and then it's all about the testing. We know that it's out there. That's the thing. We know that COVID is out there, and we know that the more they test, there are going to be more people coming into positive. I was very anxious to hear what public health had to say during the public hearing that we had yesterday. I was hoping we would get the director, but instead, we had a gentleman who was the manager of the CDC section of public health. Chema was his name. And one of the questions that I asked Chema, I said, Chema, if we were to have this election and the amount of people, well, first, Madam Speaker, we asked if he ever been to a Guam election to see how it's set up and what it looks like. Unfortunately, he did not have the opportunity, even though he's been here 3 years, so I definitely told him to register to vote, but I asked him, so this is the scenario. There are 67 precincts, actually, and of them, we have about 55,000 people who are registered voters at this time. If we were to have an election within the next 6 months, would this spread? Would this cause a spreading of the coronavirus? I mean, we're seeing it in California now, that it's starting to even spread and more people are going into the hospital. I asked him, so what is his opinion? And he couldn't answer. He couldn't answer that. He really couldn't say if there would be a spread or not, or of course, you know, to try and do your due diligence with regards to putting safety precautions in place. But it was the unknown that concerned me. And let's put politics aside, Madam Speaker. Let's put this aside, because we keep hearing about the issues on politics or how this is going to favor one party over another party, etc. Let's put that aside. This is about our health and safety of our people. Democracy is alive. We're going to have a general election, and everybody who signed up to run for public office is going to be on that ballot. And they will be chosen by the people of Guam. Democracy is alive. One of the concerns that I had to, Madam Speaker, is we had Dr. Ron McNitch. He brought up the fact that in the Organic Act of Guam that dictates our voting, process. He said, nowhere in the Organic Act of Guam requires us to have a primary. And that was a concern of a good colleague of mine too. Will it jeopardize the federal government's rules and regulations? And according to this, it does not. Actually, that's a first for me. I enjoy primaries as well, like most of us. It gives us a good feel of what's going on and where we can push in certain areas. But again, Madam Speaker, put the politics and the strategies aside and let's look at the safety and welfare of our people. Over 50%. Over 50%, Madam Speaker, are 45 on up registered voters. That's huge. Madam Speaker, it was brought up earlier about a number that the Guam Election Commission had brought up on training individuals. And actually the number was really 335 is what they needed. And then and hiring an additional 150. So that's a total of 485 precinct officials that are needed to ensure the safety and put the mechanisms in place, not only for the people of Guam, the voters, but the precinct officials themselves. Now, I spoke to Maria Pangilinan, and she said, right now we have 300, in her testimony, 300 applicants. And then I asked her, of the 300 applicants, how many of them will stay on board and how many will basically not meet the criteria? She said about 20% will fall short on the 300. 20% will not meet the criteria or they will opt to get out. So you're taking 300, subtracting 20% of that 300. You have a low amount of number to meet the goal of their 485 to run an election safe for our people. She also mentioned that with these numbers, it's going to be very difficult to train these individuals. There's not enough time to train these individuals. So that's a big issue. Even if this bill does not go through and we have a primary, will it be safe? Will there be enough individuals to be properly trained to ensure the safety and welfare of our people, our voters? Do we want to take a chance? I don't think any of us want to take a chance on our Manamku or those who are most vulnerable. Even though the primary has proven many times over, it's probably the lowest turnout of voters that come out during a primary. It's very, very low. Madam Speaker, it was mentioned earlier that the times have changed. I know it's very difficult for many people to make changes. It's probably the hardest thing for anyone to do is to change what they're used to. But we didn't go down this road knowing that it was going to be a pandemic that's hitting not only Guam, but worldwide. And we all have to make adjustments. Even our education, even after the superintendent of education is reassessing everything, finding different ways to ensure education keeps moving forward, but doing it in a very safe manner. But if it should get any worse, then he has to rethink this out again. Madam Speaker, again, I support this bill. I support this bill because of the safety I feel that our people of Guam is concerned about as well. And that's the reason why this bill was introduced, because there are many people out there who came up to me, and that's probably why the author wrote this bill, to not have a primary, because constituents have been coming up to us and say, we really don't need it. Do you really think it's a time that we need a primary when there's a pandemic out there? Not only this author, but the author of 374. I'm pretty sure got the same calls. And it's important, Madam Speaker, that we hear the people of Guam and their concerns, and that's what we're doing here today. I greatly appreciate the concerns from everyone and allowing the opportunity for us to assess those concerns and do what's right. And I'm sure that everyone here wants to do what's right for the people of Guam. And the one thing that we can do for sure today on this bill is make it safe for them. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on the measure, and don't forget to wash your hands.
Thank you, Minority Leader. On the main motion, I'll recognize Senator Clint Rigel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this is definitely a difficult decision to make. On one hand, we have a lot of people saying that it seems like this is a waste of time and a waste of money. On the other hand, we have people saying that this isn't a fair decision to make at this time. I want to be clear that I've always thought that it's the political parties who should pay for the primaries. But this bill doesn't do that. This bill doesn't require the parties to pay for the primary. This bill cancels the primary. I know the primary author of the bill, primary sponsor, we asked some questions earlier, and he did not want to discuss or entertain any potential ifs. You know, what if there's a runoff election and we don't save any money, for example? But for us, that's just a part of our job. Every piece of legislation we do has potential consequences that we're unsure of, and we have to weigh all of the ifs, all of the potential consequences. And the ifs that have been brought up today are not even just potential or possible, they're highly probable consequences. In fact, the GEC has said that, and others have said, that it's very not just possible, but probable that we would have a runoff election, and that would result in no savings. So we have to entertain all the ifs, we have to entertain all the possibilities and weigh them for ourselves, and then come to a decision and make a decision. The GEC testified saying that canceling the primary would have unintended consequences, and we're not sure what all those consequences are. What I do know is that mayoral candidates from several villages, 3 specifically that I can name in Talafofo, in Arahan, Malesu, have specifically emailed me or messaged me or contacted me and said that they felt that changing this in the middle of the contest is unfair. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I look at here, is that we're changing the rules in the middle of a contest. No one likes that, and it's just simply not fair. The deadline to file has passed. That means we're thinking about changing the rules of a contest after the contest has already been closed to participants. I mean, the contest is well underway. It's in the middle of it. People can't file to run anymore, and now we're going to change it, or we're considering changing it. So for me, this isn't fair for some candidates, and some candidates have told me that they felt this was unfair to them. And for me, fairness is the most important thing in our election process, is fairness across the board. It can't be fair for some. It can't even be fair for many or most. It must be fair for all. And to me, if we cancel this election, this primary election, it will not be fair for all. So with that, I must rise in opposition to this bill, and I will be voting no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Clinton. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Joseph Augustine, I will acknowledge you on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, Madam Speaker, today I've heard many statements of how many people show up at revenue and tax. I can tell you off the bat, minimum of 600 people show up there to register their vehicle. My colleagues understand that if you're familiar with revenue and tax, you not only do registration, you also have driver's license, you also have real property, you also have collection branch, you also have income tax, you got your GRT, you got your business license, you got your insurance and banking, you also have your ABC with compliance. 9 different sections. Registration alone tracks 600 people a day. Amazing, huh? When I spoke to Ms. Shimizu less than 15 minutes ago, she said, on an easy day, it's over almost 1,000 people. When we look at the election process, when you go into revenue and tax, and I mean, some of my colleagues have said, it's not the same. Gosh, I'm happy you figured that out. It's not the same. Going to revenue and tax is not the same as going to an election. Going to Home Depot is not the same as going to an election. Going to Cost You Less or any other store is not the same. That should be an easy one, right? When you go to any of these retail stores, you're not going there to do one item which you do on election day. You are controlled on election day to walk in, go specifically to your precinct, vote, and walk out the same door and the same hallway and straight to your car. When you go to any of these other places, you're allowed to go and shop. Several of my colleagues I've met several days or a few days ago at Home Depot. We were in line for about, was there maybe 100 people in front of me? And then when I got in there, there's at least easy 400 or 500 to 1,000 people in Home Depot. We get to walk around. There's no curve of the COVID. They take all the steps to curve COVID in the market. The stores are open. My colleagues, you drive down Marine Drive or whatever road you take, you will find that the traffic is as if there was no COVID. You can go to the post office and you can get in line, and they take the same steps, more so at the election than they do at even the post office. Because at the post office, they don't check your temperature. They don't have a place for you to sanitize. But I'm going to safely say that the Election Commission will probably do that. And none of the places I've identified do you have a drive-up to pay your bill other than the banks. Or if you went to Wendy's or Burger King or something, you drove up to buy a meal. But at the election, you do have a drive-up. You can vote, and it curves the COVID. We want to talk about numbers. 54,000 people are registered to vote in 2018. 30,000 voted. 2016, 49,000 voters registered. 24,000 voted. 2014, 49, 21. We want to talk about the ifs. If you get less than 50% or 60% to vote, you can almost bet the chances of a runoff is likely. If we were to cancel the primary, my colleagues, you are well aware that in the last term, for my colleagues that served with me, or who I've served with, I introduced a bill to stop the government from paying for a primary. Nobody stood with me when I introduced that. The parties didn't want because they didn't have funding to run their own primary. This term, I introduced that. Sure, I introduced it with other issues with the Guam Election Commission or the bill that governs the election. Nobody stood next to me. But today, we're using the excuse of COVID. But we don't make any steps to curb COVID at the stores. We don't make any steps to curb COVID at the government of Guam agencies. But you know what, my colleagues? Every agency and store has taken the steps to curb COVID. And the Guam Election Commission has a better mechanism in place. They're better than everywhere else. Because you can drive up and vote. You're directed to go specifically. You can't go out there and think of, I'm going to go buy me, like when you go to Home Depot, I'm going to go buy me plywood, but I also need nails. I also need to go down and get rope at the other end. You don't have a choice. You're in there to vote and then leave. So with that note, I couldn't remove the primary from the government's responsibility. My original bill that I withdrew was to modify it. Couldn't even do that with what was happening with the public hearing and the comments I've been getting and emails and texts I've been getting from the people of Guam. So I move that we just have a full primary. Guam Election Commission can handle it. Let's not kid ourselves. They've done a great job for many years, and they will continue doing a great job for the many years to come. And I actually stand in opposition of Bill 375. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Jim Moylan, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this opportunity to close on this bill. I did have the opportunity also to make some quick stops before coming back. I did go to Revenue Tax and I had to pay my bills so I won't be fined. So I know that's important for me to do, and I think a lot of people are also feel that's important for them to do, to pay their bills, to pay their taxes, July 15th and so forth. But we don't really have a choice to do that. And if we don't do those things, we'll get fined. And then I also enjoyed my lunch before coming back here today because I'm hungry and I need to survive, and I don't have a choice but to eat, and I'm fortunate to eat too, and I'm thankful for that. Probably tonight I'll read the book about Nostradamus too, because I would like to predict the future and know how people do that, and it would probably help me sleep. But what I'm here today to do is to thank you first, Madam Speaker, for providing this emergency session for the 3 bills. And I had the opportunity to put ours into discussion. I'm happy for that. I'm also thankful that we had the public hearing for the 2 bills, and we heard the public comment. And I appreciate the public comments as well. And during the debate for this bill, it was good and helpful as too. At least we're doing something. We're taking some action. And I'm thankful for the amendment that was proffered and passed, and it would strengthen the bill as well. But this bill just isn't about me, and it's not about any colleagues in particular or any of the new candidates. This bill is about the community's public health. It's about our situation which we are in today, not tomorrow because I don't know about it, but it's today. And it's also about our taxpayers' money. In our poor economic situation that we're facing and will be acting upon in the next month or so, and hearing more of the budget hearings and figuring out how we're going to keep our government surviving to provide the necessities for our community. The people of Guam are going to, registered voters are going to have the opportunity to vote. And that's going to be if this bill so passes, it will be in the general election. Let the voters decide on how we move forward and how we have performed. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity, and I thank my colleagues for the debate. And I kindly request, Madam Speaker, to place the bill number 37535 core as amended onto the 3rd reading file. Madam Speaker.
On that motion, is there an objection? Is there an objection to putting the vote to the voting file? Hearing none, motion carries. We are now on Bill 330. I'm going to take a moment's recess. Enmienda 35 en la legislatura en Guam is back from recess. Senator Joseph Augustine, I'm going to acknowledge you.
Madam Speaker, I ask that we recess until tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and the only reason for that is that I just got off a phone with the Guam Legislature Commission, and there's some issues that they brought up in reference to this bill that we want to iron out, and that's why I'm asking for that recess, so I can get back on the phone with them and we can continue conversation and not have the body waiting for an answers. All right, thank you.
We are in recess till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.